Cinderella. Once upon a time there lived an unhappy young girl. Her mother was dead, her father had married another woman, a widow with two daughters, and her stepmother didn't like her one little bit. All the nice things, kind thoughts, and loving touches were for her own daughters. And not that just kind of thoughts and love, but also dresses, shoes, delicious foods, and comfy bed, as well as every home comfort. All this was laid on for her daughters, but for the poor unhappy girl there was nothing at all, for she had to work hard all day, and only when every evening came was she allowed to sit for a while. Cinderella used to spend long hours all alone trying to avoid everyone. It was quite true. Cinderella even dressed in rags with a dusty grey face from the cinders. One day, beautiful new dresses arrived at the house. A ball to be held at court, and the stepsisters were getting ready to go into it. Cinderella didn't even dare ask, "What about me?" because she was afraid of asking and humiliating herself, and she just wanted to avoid talking to her stepmother. "You, my dear, you're staying at home to wash the dishes, scrub the floor, and turn down the beds for your stepsisters. They will come home tired and very sleepy." Cinderella sighed and didn't even bother replying back since she feared talking to her. In the kitchen, where Cinderella was sitting all by herself, there was a burst of light, and its fairy appeared. "Don't be alarmed, Cinderella," said the fairy. "I know you would love to go to the ball, and so you shall." Cinderella replied shakily. She didn't even know what to say. She didn't have much experience with talking to people. She barely even says a word during the whole day. What's wrong, my dear?" asked the fairy. Nothing," said Cinderella. "Okay, let's get you prepared," said the fairy, excited evident in her voice. "No," said Cinderella, trembling. "Why's that?" said the fairy. "I don't want to go because I'm embarrassed," said Cinderella. "Why?" said the fairy. "I'm dressed in rags," Cinderella replied. "The servants will turn me away. Everyone will look at me with disgust." She almost cried. The fairy smiled. With a flick of her magic wand, Cinderella found herself wearing the most beautiful dress, the loveliest ever seen in the realm. "Now that we have settled the match of the dress," said the fairy, "we'll need to get you a couch. A real lady would never go to the ball on foot. Quick, get me a pumpkin and 7 mice," she ordered. "Oh, okay," said Cinderella, rushing away. Cinderella soon returned with a fine pumpkin and 7 mice. "Good!" exclaimed the fairy. With a flick of her magic wand, the pumpkin turned to a sparkling couch, and the mice became 6 white horses, while the 7th mouse was turned into a coachman. Cinderella could hardly believe her eyes. "I shall present you at court. You will soon see that the prince in whose honor the ball is being held will be enchanted by your loveliness. But remember, you must leave the ball at midnight and come home, for that it is when the spell ends. Your couch will turn back into a pumpkin, the horses will become mice again, and the coachman will turn back into a mouse, and you will be dressed again in rags and wearing clogs instead of these dainty little slippers. Do you understand?" Cinderella nodded and said, "Yes, I understand," she said timidly. When Cinderella entered the ballroom at the palace, a hush fell. Everyone stopped in mid-sentence to admire her elegance, her beauty and grace. She immediately became nervous and started sweating. "Who can that be?" people asked each other. When the prince set eyes on Cinderella, he was struck by her beauty. Walking over to her, he bowed deeply and asked her to dance. Her cheeks became rosy. Cinderella replied, her heart beating faster. She was very afraid of everything happening around her. All eyes were on her, and the prince was asking her to dance. She didn't know what to do, so she quickly, and without a word of goodbye, she slipped from the prince's arms and ran down the steps. As she ran, she lost one of her slippers, but not for a moment did she dream of stopping to pick it up. Once she fled and vanished into the night. The prince, who was now madly in love with her, picked up her slipper and said to his ministers, "Go and search everywhere for the girl whose foot this slipper fits. I will never be content until I find her." So the ministers tried the slipper on the foot of all the girls, and on Cinderella's foot as well. Surprise! The slipper fits her perfectly. "Come with us, fair maiden. The prince awaits to present you with his engagement ring." So Cinderella nervously went with them and lived with the prince